What do I do as the healing mentor? Well, I help you to release the fear-based emotions that you're carrying in your heart that prevent you from love-based living. I help you get to a place where you absolutely thrive and your life is full of joy, peace, and love. How do I do that? I use my proprietary HEAL framework, which is based on my lived experience of the journey I took to heal myself. What I learned on that journey is that to heal, we need three essential elements. We must learn to build and foster hope. We must evolve as human beings through deep self-discovery work to discover who we were before all of the masks we started to wear as a result of our trauma and abuse, our pain and our suffering. And we must learn how to love and how to show up in loving relationships with the significant people in our life. My work today is to help you build your skill set to heal yourself from your past and to have speed and resiliency when you work through difficult situations in the future that come from our human to human experiences.
How did I get to be the healing mentor? Let me back up in my history quite a ways. We're going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to give you a short overview of my pain and suffering. That's a significant part of my journey. I really can break it up into two parts. I have my pain and suffering journey, and then I have my healing journey, which is how I became the healing mentor. My pain and suffering began when I was 5 years old. I was sexually abused by my grandfather, and I came to learn many years later that on that day, he chained me to the foundation of a wall that I would go on to grow around myself for 45 years. In fact, when I discovered it, it was 45 years tall and 45 years thick. During those 45 years of my suffering, I continued to endure more abuse, more trauma, and a lot of pain and suffering that I inflicted upon myself. In fact, I often refer to myself as the wretched abuser because I can be the absolute worst abuser of myself that I've ever met. I was date raped and then bullied when I was in high school. And because of the family dynamics, the dysfunction in my family at that point in time, I lived through all of that alone. I didn't have parents who I could tell about what I was experiencing. And the vast majority of my friends in high school didn't come to my defense. I wouldn't say they turned against me, but they were not there to defend me and what I was experiencing, particularly when it came to the bullying. So I found myself in a place where I went through that all by myself, alone and very lonely. That happened when I was 15. And then right after my 19th birthday, I met my to-be husband, who I was in a relationship with for 33 years. He's now my ex-husband as a result of my healing journey. During those 33 years with him, because he too is a survivor and was an unhealed survivor, I suffered many micro traumas. Microtraumas are those daily interactions that we have with significant people in our life that are painful, they're hurtful. It could be a condescending look. It's what I call the 98 percenter look, and that's 2% of the people in the world are smart, and the other 98% are idiots. That's a motto that my ex-husband used to have. And there were many times when I caught a look that made me feel like I was one of those 98 percenters. He would also be detached from me. And a lot of that was through a very busy and chaotic life that we created. Anything that could distract him from his emotions and engaging with me, I participated in and spent many years dissociating from myself, being a busyholic in chaos. I describe much of my life as being dissociative. I suffered from dissociative amnesia. And what I believe today is happening to me when I'm in a traumatic or abusive event is that I just check out. My mind says, yeah, we don't need to be here. And I leave. I go somewhere else in my head, and I'm actually not recording the events that happen. Now, I do carry the feelings that I have inside of me, And I know how someone made me feel in the interaction, but I don't have the ability to recount the specific event of what they did or what they said to me that caused me to feel the way that I feel. So I just dissociate, I just leave and don't record it. I'm actively work on that now when I'm in a situation where I'm having a conversation with someone that could be triggering for me and put me into that state. I'm actually very much aware of it now and really trying to stay focused so that I can keep a hold of the events and then be able to process both the event and my emotions properly once it's all over. Dissociation, I could also use that word for substance abuse and drinking too much alcohol. There were periods of time in my life when I really engaged in a lot of reckless behavior around drugs and alcohol. It's only by the grace of God that I did not suffer catastrophic consequences from my behavior, either spending some time with law enforcement or injuring myself or someone else, even worse, taking someone's life. It's by the grace of God that those things never happened to me. As I've thought about all of this in my life more recently, I really feel like it's God's grace that prevented me from becoming an addict, because there might have been some years when that might have been what I was trying to do. Had I had that addictive personality, I may very well have become an addict. God's grace in my life, that did not happen to me. But nevertheless, there was a period of time when my alcohol and drug use was a form of dissociation. And then I also dissociated by being that busyholic in chronic chaos. And that was my life for the vast majority of those 30 years. I was busy as a professional with a career that was skyrocketing, sought after, and very much in demand because I was very good at the work I was doing. I traveled a lot away from home and worked long hours and very intense projects. And then my husband and I had a full working ranch, which had many animals on it, lots of structures and fencing and land that had to be tended to. All of my weekends and holidays and even my nights when I would come home from work were filled with caretaking for someone else, whether that be a two-legged someone else, my husband, or some four-legged or feather animal. I never had time for myself. By the end of that relationship, I had pretty much let my husband, and yes, I did say let him, I let my husband take everything from me. He took everything emotionally, physically, financially, mentally, spiritually, socially, my family. And the only part that I kept for myself actually was the part that God would not let me let go of. And that's the part that saved me. Now, that's a great way to segue into my healing journey. That began 5 years ago. One day, walked into a hypnotherapy session because I was having a little trouble forging deep relationships with people. The impetus for going to hypnotherapy had nothing to do with my personal life and my personal relationships. It was really about my career, because I had taken a new role at work, which was going to require me to engage at a deeper level with the clients that me and my teams were serving, but also the team members and employees for whom I had direct responsibility from a leadership perspective. I knew that in order to be able to really connect deeply with them, I was going to need some help loosening up some constraints. In fact, I was terrified about being able to do what I knew I needed to do from a relationship standpoint to be successful in my new role. I shared my concern with my medical doctor one day, and she said, "Oh, we have this woman on staff who performs hypnotherapy, and she might be able to help you." So I went in innocently to that session. It's the kind of therapy you go to when you're trying to quit smoking or lose weight. I thought I was going in there to see what might happen with this constraint I was feeling around developing deep relationships. I had no idea what was going to happen. That hypnotherapy event was one of the most terrifying events that I've ever had in my life. For a few hours, I was under hypnosis, behaving like a terrified young child, the 8-year-old me, because I was, for the first time in my life, coming to grips in my conscious awareness, or would become my conscious awareness, the reality of the fact that I had been sexually abused by my grandfather when I was 5 years old. There were fragments of events that had happened around bringing all of that to the forefront of my conscious awareness, but they had been scattered and buried and disconnected for many years. In the hypnotherapy, all of those events came rushing together, and I suddenly became aware of the reality of what had happened to me. So that was a terrifying event because during the hypnotherapy, I was behaving, or I was my 8-year-old self, and I was frantic because I was trying to escape my grandfather, who was trying to find me to hurt me. I was trying to escape him and trying to battle with him in a house that he was in to rid the world and myself of everything that was my grandfather. I was not successful in doing that at that time, but when I came back to my conscious awareness, I was definitely aware of the fact that I had been sexually abused by him when I was that young child, or even younger, actually. I was also really terrified when I came back to conscious awareness because I suddenly had this very deep burning sensation inside of me that I had no idea who I really was. And if I didn't know who I was, then how on earth could anybody else in this world have any idea who I am? And that terrified me. I felt my loneliness and my aloneness that I had been feeling for so many years. And at the end of that session, I really came face to face with that wall that I had built for 45 years. In fact, it was like a wrecking ball crashed into that wall on that day. I fell into a deep despair. I'm a naturally very hopeful person, but I lost all of my hope that day. And for about 2 or 3 weeks after that, I continued to experience a sense of hopelessness and deeper despair. But I also had this nagging urge inside of me to start talking to someone. At the end of probably 3 weeks, I met with a couple of my friends and told them what I had been experiencing. That is the event that set me off on my healing journey. The hypnotherapy put me at the gateway of my healing pathway. Talking to my friends that day was me opening that gate and stepping onto my pathway because of some of the information that one of my friends gave to me that day. Certain words that she used with me sent me on my healing journey. She used words with me like trauma and trauma therapy, which led me to my trauma therapist. She told me that I had been traumatized and abused and that I needed help. And so that sent me to find a support group that was for female survivors, children and adults who had been sexually abused. I found a support group that became core to my healing journey. And then a number of other things that came on the backside of that. When I found my therapist and the support group, that reignited my resolve and gave me my hope back. I started to develop an insatiable urge for knowledge. And that knowledge has just set me in all kind of different directions with my healing journey that I've been walking now for 5 years. It was really intense and focused for the first 9 months, pulling myself out of that deep despair, using different tools and resources to help me dig very deeply into myself and discover who I really am beneath many masks that I was wearing. All of those masks hid me from myself and hid me from the world. I was somebody's daughter who I was always trying to please my parents. I was always trying to fit in school and please my friends. I was always trying to please the people that I was working for, going above and beyond what I needed to do to continue to advance my career and be successful. But I was caretaking in the work that I was doing. I did a lot of people pleasing with my husband, whatever he wanted. As I said, I gave everything to him by the end of our relationship together, where I had just a tiny sliver of myself left that I used to heal myself. All of those are different masks I wore where I was being who someone else wanted me to be. As a result of that, I completely lost touch with myself. So the core of my healing journey was evolving as a human being and doing really deep self-discovery work to learn who I am. I had to go on an exploration of everything that I've been through, my traumas, my abuses that I've survived, the macros, the big things, and the micros, those daily hurts with people that mounted up over time and cost me a lot of pain. I had to explore my vulnerabilities. I had to explore how my strengths and weaknesses can become my vulnerabilities. What do I mean by that? One of my greatest gifts is being a caregiver, but I can turn that into my Achilles heel and be taken advantage of. I have experienced that in two different relationships in significant ways. I had to explore my emotional needs. I literally had no idea what those were when I began working with my trauma therapist. And by the way, I think that's very common for many of us that we don't know what our emotional needs are. If you don't know your emotional needs, there's no way you can tell another person how to make you feel whole in the relationship with them. Now, of course, what I just said assumes that person has the ability to do that for you in part or in whole. But if you can't share with them what it is that you need emotionally in order to have your needs met, you have little chance of being fulfilled and nourished in that relationship. I had to discover that the hard way. The reason I wasn't being fulfilled in many of my relationships is because I didn't know what my emotional needs were and I couldn't ask for them to be met. The other important thing about being able to show up in love in relationships with other people is that once you learn about your emotional needs, you become very much aware that other people have their own emotional needs. For you to be supportive and make those people feel whole or as if their emotional needs are getting met, you have to do the work to understand what theirs are, ask the question and learn about them. But you have to understand the concept of what emotional needs are in the first place. I also did a lot of work to understand my survival mechanisms and to see myself as that survivor. Everything I talked about before that I put under the broad umbrella of dissociation, whether that's literal dissociation from my mind or dissociation through some sort of substance use or dissociation by being a busyholic in chronic chaos. All of those were unhealthy ways that I was surviving in life, things that I had to explore. I also undertook something called a parentectomy, where I literally cast my parents out of my life, and along with them went my sister and my nieces and my nephews. Eventually, I cast all my friends out of my life. Now, much of that was about keeping the peace with my husband at the time and people pleasing him, making sure that he was happy and getting what he wanted in the relationship, no matter what it was doing to me. But I came to learn that's also a very common way that we survive our relationships when they become painful and very difficult to exist in. Even if we're contributing to the fact that the relationship is painful, it's sometimes a way that survivors are able to escape that pain from being in a relationship that's not working with their parents. For me, that cascaded out beyond my parents and went a lot further to where I ectomied everybody in my life, which contributed to me being in that very lonely and alone place by the time I'm at the inside of that wall when I was dropped at the gateway of my healing journey. A lot of what I've said about my healing journey, in fact, the vast majority of what I said is an exploration of me. It was my inner work, the inner knowing of who I am, how I had survived my life, why I had survived my life the way that I had, and doing the work to become a better version of myself and making decisions for my highest and best good. All of that was about me. There's been very little in my healing journey that's had to do with the people who hurt me. Now, I've had some profound healing experiences that I do talk about, and I've shared those in my book, Becoming an Empowered Survivor. I've shared some of it on episodes of my vodcast on YouTube, Let's Heal with Beth Jones. You can find those there. Much of that is because a lot of the healing that I'm doing is at the soul level, between my soul and the soul of the people who have hurt me. It's about karmic healing. And that's what I do in this lifetime for myself and for people in my immediate family. And so that's where a lot of my experience has been. Those have also been so that I can share those experiences with you so that you can see how healing can work when you don't have the ability to interact. You can't, won't, don't want to, whatever it is, directly with the people who have hurt you. And in fact, my experience is that you don't really have to interact with them directly. You can do a lot of healing focusing on yourself and giving grace to and acceptance of yourself as a survivor, which then allows you to extend that same grace and acceptance of the people who have hurt you to them also as survivors. I have said before, and I will continue to say, there is that phrase, hurt people, but I also know that healed people heal people. I think about the hurt people part when I think about extending that grace for an acceptance of the people who have hurt me in my life and seeing them as survivors. And then I think about the healed people heal people when I think about the work that I'm doing to heal myself so that I can pass that on to you as the healing mentor. That brings me around to what I do as the healing mentor. There's a great phrase out there that I heard not too long ago. My life is my laboratory. That is very true for me. I share my lived experiences through mentorship to help people learn how to heal. That's what I know how to do. I'm an expert at it. I've done it for myself. I know the approach that I take to healing that I took for myself can work for you. Why is that? Because what I'm going to teach you how to do is to build a skill set as your mentor. I'm going to teach you how to build a skill set to heal. Each of us has suffered through our own unique experiences in terms of the trauma and the abuse that we've been through. We've survived our lives uniquely for ourselves. Nobody has walked our exact same pathway, either with the trauma and abuse or with the ways that we've survived, the coping mechanisms, the unhealthy survivorship that we have lived through. Because of that, nobody has been on your healing journey or my healing journey. You have to find it for yourself. And that's what I do as the healing mentor, is to help you figure out what is that healing journey that works for you. Now, there are some basic building blocks that I've talked about, tools, resources, the deep self-discovery work that we do to understand who we are, fostering hope and making sure we're keeping hope at the center of our journey as we walk every day. And then there's the whole exploration of love and learning to truly be able to love in healthy relationships and learning how to love in unhealthy relationships where we need to do something to change the relationship so it's not hurting us anymore. There are options to do that. But what do you do? That's what I'm going to help you to figure out. What do you do with those unhealthy relationships? And how do you foster loving relationships that support you? You need to be able to show up in it. And you can't show up in love in your most significant relationships if you're carrying fear-based emotions in your heart. If you're living from that place of fear, anger, hate, resentment, pride, gossiping, all of those things that we do, if you're living from that place, that fear, you have no way of being able to show up in love in relationships and fostering truly healthy relationships. I'm going to tell you how to do that. How do you show up in love? I've been through that too. I've been journeying for a while now with love, and I have a lot of great things to share with you. All right. So that is what I do as the healing mentor. All right. This is my call to action. If you want to connect with me, there are several ways that you can do that. You can find me on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And my handle on all of those platforms is at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. So on all 5 of those platforms, you can find me with that handle. If you go to YouTube and you find my channel, please subscribe and listen to my show, Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's where I share a lot of stories about other survivors who are on their healing journeys. I share my stories, and I bring you stories and information from the practitioners who help us to heal. So it's a great source of really high value information with some fantastic conversations that I've been having and will continue to have. You can also read my book, Becoming an Empowered Survivor. You can find that on Amazon. All of these resources you can get if you'll connect with me through my website, empoweredsurvivors.com. You can email me from there and you can read about how I help you. How do I help you? I work with people one-on-one in mentoring sessions. So if you are interested in working with me as your mentor directly, give me a shout somehow. Connect with me through social media or email me, Beth@empoweredsurvivors.com, and we'll set up some time to talk about what it is that you need and how I can serve you as your mentor. You can also take the Empowered Survivors Journey, which you can find from my website, empoweredsurvivors.com/journeying. The journey includes first steps, and that is your introduction to the HEAL framework, which is my approach to healing. It is bringing together the three parts that I know are essential to healing, and that is having hope and fostering hope, evolving and doing that deep self-discovery work to understand who you are, and learning how to love. First Steps is an introduction to that framework, so you can understand more about what it is that you can learn if you engage more deeply with the HEAL framework. And where can you do that? You can do that on the Sovereign Odyssey. That is a 16-week masterclass that I have created just for you, where we go deep into the HEAL framework and my approach to healing, where I'm going to help you to build that skill set where you learn how to heal, to really do it for the first time, to heal from the past and everything that you're carrying in you today. And then you'll be able to practice and hone those skills so that you become faster and more resilient over time as you continue to have interactions with people where you might need to heal. Healing is something that we're going to do for all of our lives, and that's because we are human beings who engage in human-to-human interaction. And because of that, we are very likely going to experience hurt again at some point in our life. We need to know how to heal. We need to know how to get through those things. And once you've gone through the HEAL framework and healed your past, release the emotions that you're carrying in your heart from your past, you'll have a clear space where you can use those skills when you need them in the future, when you find yourself in a hurtful place with someone who you love or someone who is significant in your life. And then I'm going to be launching a series of retreats called the Healing Immersion, which is where I'm going to be bringing together various healing modalities and letting you experience them for yourselves. So, for example, would you love to engage with a practitioner who's going to come and teach you the Japanese art form of kintsugi, which is breaking a beautiful piece of pottery or something that's beautiful and then putting it back together where it's even more beautiful than it was before. Breaking and ruining that beautiful object is the way that we can express emotion, let out anger, hate, tear ourselves down. It is definitely symbolic of that. And then putting back together in that beautiful new form is what we're doing when we heal. We are creating a new and more beautiful version of who we are because we've taken off all of that ugliness that we've been carrying with us for so long. I'm also going to be bringing you things like family constellations and Reiki and inner child healing. So be on the lookout for the healing immersions. It'll be your opportunity to try these modalities for yourself. All right. That is how you can work with me. And I'm hoping that I will see you very soon, either connecting with me, as I've mentioned, or working with me directly, either as your mentor or through the Empowered Survivors Journey.